My next patron question is from Graham, who is curious about the status of a filmmaker who's had a few ups and downs in his career. After the release of his hit films, The Sixth Sense and Unbreakable, M. Night Shyamalan's movies steadily declined in quality throughout the 2000s, with The Last Airbender seemingly being his low point. Has he improved at all since then? Shyamalan's career and filmography has taken an interesting direction in the past decade. There was a time when he was widely mocked for his filmmaking choices, but that does seem to have calmed down as he has shifted away from big movies to smaller productions. Well, small by Hollywood standards. And we've also seen The Village and a few other Shyamalan films be reevaluated. The Last Airbender was a movie where many said he had completely fallen off, and he has been honest about that in recent years. He has mentioned that it's a movie he regrets making, and felt he got lost directing this big special effects-driven spectacle, and that little of his own voice was present in that film. Even though he was defensive about the film and its original release, and even expressed interest in a sequel a few years after that, Shyamalan's tune has since changed. He felt the same looking back at After Earth, which is the last big-budget movie he has directed. It was after this that Shyamalan elected to produce something smaller away from the big Hollywood studios. However, rather than seek investors, he put up $5 million of his own money to finance the visit and then shopped it around to any interested buyers. Universal would eventually pick it up, with Blumhouse also coming on board as an additional producer. I admittedly was mixed on the film, but other people were more positive and the film performed very well at the box office. Since then, he has done the same thing on all his movies by self-financing them himself, even with Universal happily distributing them. He's just making the films he wants to make and the stories he's interested in telling. One particularly fascinating choice he made was with Split, which was revealed at the end to exist in the same universe as Unbreakable. Cinematic universes, of course, became a big thing thanks to Marvel, but Shyamalan did not seem to do this to jump on a trend. He seemed to genuinely be interested in exploring more of the world and themes he established in that earlier film, eventually bringing Unbreakable and Split together even more in Glass. A lot of his recent movies have been largely contained to a few locations and telling a story about how the characters are affected by strange occurrences there. I know a lot of people found Old to be silly, and it did have a few silly moments, especially with some of the dialogue, but there was something about the film that got under my skin. Just the way each person ages differently on this beach and the horrors that can come from aging so rapidly. However, I admit I really did not like Knock at the Cabin. I thought the plot was preposterous and I found the dialogue and acting to be iffy. Others seemed to be more positive though. Even with my overall mixed feelings on his output the past number of years, I think it's good that Shyamalan is directing the projects he's passionate and excited about, and his strategy of putting his own money into these movies seems to be working out for him. He also always seems to swing for the fences, especially after feeling he played things too safe with The Last Airbender and After Earth. You either get on the wavelength of his movies or you don't, and that does make things a little exciting, as when I begin watching a Shyamalan movie, I have no idea how I'm going to feel about it by the end. He also seems to have gotten his fan base back after disappointing them in the late 2000s and early 2010s. The mockery has similarly died down a bit. I remember seeing Scott Pilgrim vs. the World in theaters, and one of the trailers shown beforehand was for Devil, a movie he produced. When his name popped up in the trailer, I heard a few audience members groan and laugh. That's obviously anecdotal, but it is an example of how people had grown tired of him. However, he would gain back a lot of goodwill with his self-financed films. Something I noticed about his fan base is that not nearly as intense as other director fan bases I can name. They just seem to vibe with his filmmaking and storytelling approaches, and that's it. They recognize that not everything he has done is critically acclaimed, but that's okay. There's something about his work that appeals to his fans. I personally don't like when film fans are accused of having a director bias. Do they have a bias, or do a director's storytelling and filmmaking choices and favorite themes appeal to their specific tastes and preferences? In the case of Shyamalan's fans, while many felt he lost a lot of what made him stand out with movies like The Happening and The Last Airbender, he does appear to have won them over again with these smaller and more personal projects. And now there's a newfound curiosity about what he'll put on screens next. Thank you for your question, Graham.